Today's podcast includes commentary from a guest speaker. Neither the RIA Compliance Collective nor RIA Compliance Concepts is affiliated with the speaker or the company he or she represents.
Whether your advisory firm has 1 or 5 people, compliance will always be an issue. RIA Compliance Concepts is more than just another service provider. We truly care about seeing our clients prosper. That's why we started our podcast, the RIA Compliance Collective, providing up-to-date compliance guidance. We're passionate about doing our job so you can focus on doing your job. We understand regulatory compliance like the back of our hands, from full-service RIA registration to annual compliance reviews and everything in between. We're here to get you there.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the RIA Compliance Collective. I'm Megan. Ivan is with me today as we dive a little deeper and peel back the layers of using social media in the financial services industry. In our first episode this season, we discussed how to implement a social media marketing plan for your advisory business while staying compliant with your procedures. But once you have your plan in place, you probably want to track how your content is doing across the various platforms. You may also want to know if any particular posts are engaging your audiences more than others so that you're not wasting your time creating content that people aren't looking at. And if certain posts are drawing in more engagement, is that engagement positive or is it negative? Do you, should you, can you share that engagement on your website? You may start to feel like using social media only raises more questions instead of helping you grow your business. So today, we're hoping we can help you answer some of those questions. Joining us to discuss this is Mike Langford. Mike is the founder and CEO of finservMarketing, which is a consulting firm that specializes in providing best-in-class marketing strategies and content creation for financial services industry professionals. He's a rare breed because his skills and experience bridge both the financial services world and the digital marketing world. He's a 25-year veteran of the financial services industry and a pioneer in using digital marketing for financial professionals. He's a frequent keynote speaker on topics like digital marketing, social media, digital video, and mobile strategy for financial professionals. He's also been podcasting, for over 10 years. Before it was cool. I really could go on and on, but let's get to it. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Megan. And
Sure.
Hi, Ivan in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for getting me involved.
Mike, can you start off real quick by telling us a little bit about finservMarketing and how you got into podcasting, before everyone was in podcasting?
Sure. So, I'll kind of take that, give you the 30,000 foot level of how I got to finservMarketing and what precipitated it. So, I came up through State Street and Fidelity. So I've worked for the large world-class organizations in financial services. And in 2006, I decided to leave Fidelity and go out on my own, start an RIA. And I had no marketing budget, right? So I had to look at new media opportunities for me to reach my audience. And one of the things I noticed before I left Fidelity was LinkedIn was like a treasure trove for finding people who might have money in motion, right? So people who might have a rollover available. And so back in the old days, you have to remember LinkedIn, when I joined it, I'm user 176,299, right? So I was really, really early, joined in 2004. But I noticed once people were on there, it was basically like subscribing to their resume. Every time they made a change to their resume, I'd get an update. I would see when somebody changed jobs. And when somebody changed jobs, there's a 401k rollover available, right? When somebody got a promotion, chances are they might want to have a discussion about their new income stream, where their financial life was headed and so forth. So I'm like, this is great. This social media thing is going to work for me. So when I went out on my own, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get started. I'm going to do the networking. I'm going to use LinkedIn. And then really quickly, I said, you know what? I should probably have an email newsletter, right? So I started using Constant Contact, sending out emails to prospects, clients, referral partners. And then I heard about this thing called podcasting. Now you have to remember, the iPod was still relatively new in 2007, right? It was only a few years old then. And so I'm like, all right, I'll get started doing this thing called podcasting. I bought a Mac. This thing called GarageBand on there, made it really easy for you to record your own podcast and distribute it to iTunes. So I started doing that, but I needed to know more. And then I went out to this thing called PodCamp. It sounds really geeky. This is 2007, but it was a whole bunch of people who were talking about digital marketing. They were talking about blogging, other social media tools, podcasting, of course. And they actually talked about this thing called Twitter. And I'm a bit of a geek, right? I like to tinker with things. I'm a very early adopter. I joined, again, LinkedIn in 2004, Twitter in 2007. So I was really always there early before the general public knew what these things were. But Twitter kind of stymied me at first. I'm like, what the heck is this thing? It's kind of a waste, right? I mean, I've already connected with you on LinkedIn. I already have your text message. I already have your email. Why on earth would I want this thing called Twitter? A few months later, I see one of my clients was on Twitter. He sent me an email, and in his email signature, I saw his Twitter handle. I'm like, well, that's just ridiculous. Why would Aaron put his Twitter thing in his signature? I click on it, and he's got 600 people following him. Now Aaron has probably 50,000 people following him. But I'm like, I clicked on it and it just kind of got me interested enough to tinker with it. And then as I started looking at his Twitter bio, I thought, let me go Google him. And when I Googled his name, his Twitter bio came up on page 1 of Google. I'm like, oh, I get it. Twitter is Google juice. Social media is Google juice. You're active on social media. When people Google you, they're going to see your social media profile. It's actually helping you become more discoverable. So I started using Twitter pretty aggressively, and I started attending all these social media breakfast things and workshops and these things called tweet ups back in the day. It was basically people who would meet each other and get to know each other via Twitter, and they would just get together at bars and hang out and interact, right? It was kind of social media was allowing you to create real world connections. And so the more I used Twitter, the more I realized it was a pain in the butt to use. It was just not a really intuitive tool. Back in the day, if you posted a tweet and it was a reply to somebody, you'd have to click this in reply to link, and it would open up a new web page that would show the new tweet that was before that tweet. And you click in reply to, and each tweet was a separate web page. There's got to be a better way of doing this, right? So I ended up hiring a bunch of developers, and we created something called TweetWorks, which is the first fully threaded conversational platform for Twitter. So if you could click on a tweet, you could see all the conversation. Now that exists everywhere, right? Every social media platform threads conversations, but it wasn't like that in 2008. And so I really, really started digging in more. And then I basically, at that time, I decided, all right, I'm going to backburner my financial practice, and I'm diving in on this social thing. Awesome ride, but 2008, something else happened. This thing called a financial crisis hit. And so the money dried up, right? And so I couldn't raise capital. I ended up self-funding the thing, put a whole bunch of my own money into it. And then by the end of 2010, I ran out of cash. I was like, what the heck am I going to do now? And so I realized I was at this weird inflection point. What are we going to do? I want to stay in this space of digital marketing. I love the financial services world. And a friend of mine shared a job posting, this company called Socialware, which is based here in Austin, Texas. And we were actually my wife and I were talking about moving to Austin. And this company, Socialware, was making a platform for financial professionals to use social media and be compliant, right? So that everything would be archived, that the firm could control what features of a social network you could use. Everything would be supervisable. And they needed somebody to lead strategy, to lead social strategy, to go out there and evangelize to the large wirehouses, the large broker-dealers, to allow them to let their financial professionals use social media. Because you got to remember, in 2010, 2011, that was not intuitive. There was a lot of pushback. The SEC and FINRA were being purposely obtuse about giving any type of real guidance about what a firm should do in terms of social media. Financial professionals were on social. They were using it already, but they weren't using it compliantly because their firm had no ability to have any type of control or oversight over things. So I joined the firm, and I just started a whirlwind tour. I was all over the country speaking to huge groups of financial professionals, evangelizing, educating, and trying to get them to engage with social. I was meeting with senior leadership of just about every broker-dealer you can imagine, bringing them up to speed on how they should use social. And that was a great ride. That ended in 2012, right? The company started having troubles. They were getting their clock cleaned. Well, we had a first mover advantage in the marketplace. New startups like Hearsay Social, Actiance, which is already very well established with some of their instant messenger products, and then Smarsh, which was a low-cost provider in the marketplace, started just eating our lunch. And so I left in 2012, but a lot of the same clients came calling, and they're like, hey, Mike, we really could still use your help with strategy. We could use your help with creating educational programs for our advisors. Would you be able to work with us? And that's where finservMarketing was born. And so, at a high level, what we do is we provide digital marketing strategies for financial firms. So whether that's large, broker-dealers, large asset managers, or wirehouses, or in some cases, smaller firms, right? RIAs that might have 10 people at the firm. Occasionally we do things with individual advisors, but it's challenging there because most advisors don't have the type of budget to hire an outside firm to run, not only create a strategy for them, but also run their marketing for them. Because one of the things we like to do is, in addition to bringing the strategy on board, help those firms manage social media, manage their digital marketing going forward. Because one of the things we've noticed is too often somebody will get a strategy and they'll say, oh, this is great, this is exciting. But then you check back with them, a year from that point, and they've kind of lost their mojo, right? They're not really doing it because the daily tasks of doing their thing kind of overflow, right? Yeah. So, the type of things we do varies. It always starts with strategy. I like to say that it always starts with really getting laser focused on your target market, because most advisory firms and even most asset managers at a certain point in time, they just started taking on any client they could get their hands on, right? They've spent relatively little time getting focused on who is my ideal client? Who are we trying to reach? Who are the influencers of that ideal client? Who are the referral partners that we have in our network that we should be building up the network of those people to help us reach that client and serve that client better? So too often it's like, well, my target market is anybody who has $1 million or more of investable assets. That's not a target market. That's a criteria for who you do business with, but it's not you can't just advertise to people who have $1 million of AUM available, because nobody walks around with a little sign on their forehead that says, I have $1 million, come talk to me. It's just, you should be looking for people who are in a certain niche, right? Whether they be, went to a certain school, right? So they're alums of the same school you went to. They could be in a certain demographic, right? So they could be a certain age, they could be a certain gender, they could be of a specific industry, right? Something that you feel like you can serve them really, really well. And once we start going down that road of helping people identify their target market and the niche that they're going to serve, then everything else flows off of that, right? Everything we do on social, everything we do on your website, everything that we're helping you accomplish is making you better positioned to serve that target market, and also better positioned to attract them to engage with you. Because at the end of the day, it's all about building that audience, right? Most advisors, most firms spend a lot of time just swinging in the dark, just trying to get in front of anybody. And you'll talk to a lot of them and say, well, our business is based on referrals. Well, what are you doing to generate those referrals? So we spend a lot of time just really focused on building an audience that they have unmitigated access to.
Right. And so is that why you would think that, is that it when it comes to digital marketing and engagement? Is that why it's so important for financial professionals, or is there more to that?
That's the primary reason, because you think about marketing historically, right? Think about most advisors, and the average age of an advisor now is 60 years old, right? So most of them got their start when it was dialing for dollars time. Back when they were called stockbrokers, and they were handed a big list of numbers and you start calling, right? And then they started going to things like Chamber of Commerce meetings, and they just go to any networking event that they could get their hands on, where they could just shake a bunch of hands, put a card in somebody's palm and say, hey, think of me when you need an advisor. Well, the world has evolved. People are always available, and they're always online. We know where they're spending their time, right? Every demographic you can imagine is spending an inordinate amount of time on social media, right? It used to be, when I was back with Socialware, trying to talk to people about social, I'd get this comment all the time, like, well, Mike, that's great, but my clients, they're not on Facebook. They don't have time for that. It's like, no, ultra high net worth individuals are on Facebook, right? 50% of ultra high net worth individuals go to Facebook more than once a day. It's insane. 60% of ultra high net worth individuals, people with $10 million of investable assets or more, watch videos related to financial topics online before they make a financial decision. So they're spending their time staring at their iPhones just like we are, right? High net worth seniors spend a lot of time staring at their phones, staring at their iPads, right? All of us are spending a lot of time on these devices. That's where our attention is. Now, the good thing for you is you can get really, really particular about who you connect with. And when it comes to advertising, all of these social networks have made it really, really easy for you to get down to people in a very specific zip code, with a specific age, in a certain industry, alums at a certain college. You can really get insanely focused, right? And make it really easy to make sure that your message or marketing message is actually landing in front of the people that you're trying to attract.
So Mike, quick question. You mentioned Facebook as far as a lot of the types of clientele that most advisors are looking for are getting on Facebook. Other than Facebook, do you see that trend continuing with other social media platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram? Is Facebook the predominant leader as a social media challenge to focus on, or should they be spreading the wealth across all social media platforms?
That's a great question. And so the answer that you always give is it depends, right? So if your target market is somebody who's in a professional space, right? And so you know that they're going to be spending a lot of time on LinkedIn because they're a professional, they're in a business development or sales environment, right? Or they're a business owner. They're obviously going to pay attention to LinkedIn. But many people never go to LinkedIn except when they're changing jobs. So think about that, right? So there's lots of people that you and I come in contact with, and they are professionals. They're white collar workers. They may work in the tech industry. They're a developer. They're doing very well for themselves. You ask them how often they go to LinkedIn, and it's almost never, unless they're getting ready to change jobs, right? So that doesn't mean you shouldn't pay attention to LinkedIn if your target market is developers, as an example, because they tend to make a lot of money. They tend to change jobs relatively frequently. They'll have access to stock option plans, all that type of stuff. Well, you still want to pay attention to LinkedIn. You want to build up a big network of developers. You're going to watch and listen to LinkedIn for job changes, of course, right? Or if you see somebody in your network starting to add to their network size a lot, connecting to a lot of people, you're going to watch that. But these people are also spending a lot more of their regular time on Facebook or, like you said, Instagram, as an example. Instagram is fantastic because it's just photos. They're taking pictures of things that are interesting to them. Instagram also has a much lower barrier to connection, meaning if you send me a Facebook invite and we just met, I'm not likely to accept you right away. I got my pictures of my kids on Instagram. I've got on Facebook, excuse me. I've got a lot of my really, really personal stuff going on. You see me having conversations with my father and other family members on Facebook. To me, it's a little bit of a walled garden, right? But when I look at Instagram, it's for me at least, it's public. It's much more like, hey, this is the thing I'm interacting with today, and I'm willing to share it with the public. And for most people, Instagram is one of those things where they will accept your connection. If they've met you just once, they're cool with it, right? The same thing for Twitter. Twitter, I always tell people, that's your public you. Like, if you're broadcasting on Twitter, it's a public network, unless you've chosen to restrict your tweets, which I don't recommend at all. That makes no sense. It's kind of using Twitter in the wrong way. It's designed to be kind of public and publishing to the world. But Twitter's a fantastic tool because, again, you're to be discoverable on Google, right? A lot of people use Twitter as a real-time search engine. So if there's certain topics that you want to make sure that you're involved in that conversation, be very active on Twitter. So for you guys, as an example, compliance, right? Talking about compliance frequently and making sure that you're tagging compliance in your tweets. Anytime somebody else is having a conversation about compliance and they're searching for others, your tweets are going to show up in their search. So you want to make sure that you're active there, and it's really easy to follow you and engage with you on that network. Whereas on a more restrictive network, like Facebook or LinkedIn, it requires that extra step of you accepting the connection, right? And whereas Twitter and on Instagram, if your posts are public, I just go and follow you and it's just live. We're on board together.
Okay. And then, so there's also Snapchat. There's a lot of traction with Snapchat. Is that something that you, I guess, recommend as a channel to work with as far as promoting your business? Or is that just something that is kind of a gimmick, personal way to communicate with your personal relationships?
We typically have not recommended Snapchat for one. The ephemeral reason is the number one, right? Because things disappear. And I know they made some changes recently, but because there's some compliance challenges there, the user base on Snapchat skews very young compared to the other social networks. And the ability to really target it's less, right? It's a little more difficult for people. So really don't push people toward Snapchat. Some of the things we do see though, people using YouTube as more of a social network, right? Because YouTube's video. Lots of people spend a ton of time on YouTube and they follow each other, just like you might follow somebody on Twitter or Instagram. So YouTube can be a very effective tool for you if you're looking to, and by the way, video kills, right? People love video.
Now for a short break.
finservMarketing, helping you grow your business by engaging with your clients, prospects, and referral partners where they spend most of their time, online and on their smartphones. For more information, visit finservMarketing.com.
And now, back to the podcast.
Right? People love video.
I said people love watching video. It's much easier to watch something or listen to it than having to read 5 pages.
And it's especially exactly right. Well, that and it's also very similar to the podcast thing. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to get to know somebody before you get to know them. Meaning, like, so if you share a video and I watch a video of yours and I'm considering RIA Compliance Concepts, I might watch one. I'm like, oh, that was interesting. Oh, let me watch this other one. Oh, let me watch this other one. And next thing you know, I've seen several videos of you. I know what you look like. I've seen your facial expressions. I've seen what makes you laugh, right? I get this feel for, like, I know you. I've already sat across the table from you. You've been in my house or in my office with my screen. Like, we know each other, even though we've never met. And so it really, this makes it a lot more comfortable to allow somebody to kind of ease into the relationship. And so when they do finally either send you an email or give you a call or set an appointment, it's just going to go much more smoothly.
And so, Mike, is that something that you can help with as far as, like, if someone were to decide to pursue a video marketing campaign, is that something you can help them with their YouTube channel and organizing and producing a video for a financial professional that wants to use video marketing?
Absolutely. And it's actually something that we recommend to just about everybody, right? There's very few people that I wouldn't recommend video to. Occasionally, you've got somebody who's cripplingly shy or really, really is uncomfortable with their personal appearance, right? And so that person may not be comfortable with video. But by and large, I try to remind everybody that, look, just about everybody you want to be your client, or every single client you have now, or all of your referral partners that you're trying to reach, every single one of them is carrying around a full HD screen on their person at all times. They bring that screen with them everywhere. It's probably the last thing they look at night before they go to bed, first thing they look at in the morning. Heck, they bring it into the bathroom with them. And they always have this device with them, and they love watching video, right? And so knowing that, let's use that, right? Because it's also a way to cut through the clutter, right? Because people would, as Megan said earlier, she'd much rather watch a video than read something, right? And so it's much more engaging. It's easier to engage with. And the other thing I'll tell people is, like, look, a lot of people get nervous about, my video needs to be overly produced. I need to really, really focus on everything looking crisp and clean. I can't have an and or on there. I tell people, no, look, we can help you with your editing. Obviously, what we tend to do with people is we'll help you get set up, help you choose your equipment, help you choose or learn how to produce a good quality video. Don't worry about all the post-production stuff. We can do that for you, right? So upload your raw videos and we'll pull them down and get them edited and published to you to the various channels. And what we see is video outscores any other medium when posted to a social network. So if you post a video to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, those posts will get much more engagement, a lot more comments. You just try it on LinkedIn, post a video to LinkedIn, and then post basically the same message in written form, like a blog post, one of the LinkedIn stories, and see which one gets more interaction. You will notice that your video sometimes will get 10x the amount of engagement, the amount of views that compared to the reads of the same message.
That's pretty incredible. Mike, kind of switching gears.
Sure.
I know one thing we want to talk about today, the SEC recently shared some guidance, or really it was an investor bulletin, on the use of social sentiment tools for investors and investment advisors. Can you describe to our listeners the concept of what social media sentiment is and how it's being used effectively?
Oh, absolutely. So at the core, social sentiment is something that we've always had in the world when it comes to investing, right? What do you think of XYZ stock, right? We'll just use Apple as our proxy, right? So if I started talking to my friends, what do you think about Apple stock? They would tell me, I like it, I don't like it, right? Or I have no opinion. I'm kind of like, hold, right? I own it. I'm just not doing anything with it. I'm not selling. I'm not buying anymore, yada, yada. So sentiment's always been out there at the personal level and at the professional level, right? You look at analysts, like Wall Street analysts are giving you their buy recommendation or the sell recommendation on any individual stock or sector. So that's just sentiment. It's always been out there. And then even in the buying and selling activity, when you look at stocks trading, there's always been sentiment, right? You see that is there a lot more buyers than sellers, right? You see what's happening in the market if you're looking at technicals and activity. You can look at short activity as an example, a really great example of like, is there a negative sentiment on the stock? If there's a lot of short positions, there's a lot of built-in negative sentiment to a stock. Now, if we take that out and we go onto social media, like Twitter as an example, or investing specific social networks like StockTwits, right? Where people just talk about trading all day long. People are sharing their sentiment, their belief that this stock is going up, it's a buy or it's a sell or it's neutral all the time, right? So people, you actually go into Twitter, and if you look at any stock symbol, so in Apple's case, it's AAPL with a dollar sign in front of it. That's called a cash tag. Instead of a hashtag, it's called a cash tag, like cash money. Any stock symbol is going to have a cash tag on Twitter and on StockTwits. If you search for one of those, you will see lots of people mentioning that they're buying Apple at whatever price or selling Apple at a certain price, or they just entered into a position from an options perspective, right? Buying, selling puts or buying calls or what have you, right? So they're entering all these positions in there. So what people do on the SEC guidance, what was happening there is they're cautioning investors to be careful when looking at social sentiment data and making a rash decision, because there's a lot of noise out there. There are some tools that have been made available for you to look at social sentiment and then make a decision. Some of those tools are better than others, of course. But in every case, when you're doing an analysis on making a buy or sell, you should look at some other rationality into it, right? You shouldn't just look at, oh, well, look, there's a whole bunch of people mentioning that they're buying Apple. Maybe I should buy Apple myself. And oh, by the way, I should recommend my clients buy Apple. Well,
yeah, exactly.
Good reason.
Exactly. You have to take in other considerations like research and financials and all of that stuff. And should never rely simply on someone's recommendation on social media. And then you're right. We're seeing that a lot, and especially like day traders. We're seeing a lot of day traders post stuff on Twitter and some of these subscription service newsletters that are targeted to, DIY investors that send signals and all of that stuff. But typically, when you work with a regulated investment advisor or financial professionals that is in a regulated industry, the common thing you definitely want to look at when you're looking at social media information is if there's proper disclosures in place. If they're making recommendations, there should be some kind of disclosure in their recommendation. And if not, then that's something that you should have a question mark about. So what do you see are some of the dangers of misusing sentiment other than just making rash decisions? Are there any other potential dangers that investors could look out for, or potential problems with sentiment?
Well, I mean, at the very basic level, you could find yourself victim to a pump and dump scheme, right? I mean, really, really easy, because all of a sudden you look at all the sentiment and everybody seems to be keying in on this one particular security, right? Or this one particular market movement. And you're seeing nothing but positive sentiment. And you're like, I've got to get in on this, right? And you're watching the stock and it's going up and up and up and up. And then all of a sudden the floor falls out on you, right? Well, just like we saw in recent elections, that there are armies of bots out there posting fake data, fake information on social networks. The same thing happens on the stock side and the investment side. So you're really careful there. You have to assume that people might have an agenda. Now, there are some effective social sentiment tools out there, right? So for instance, one of our clients, they actually run a new index based on social sentiment. Everything is, they look across the universe of the 300 largest stocks that are out there, and all these large caps, they take all the data, not only on Twitter, StockTwits, but they look at blogs and other news organizations that are user-generated content, and they use AI to measure all of that information. And they look at the ones that have the most positive sentiment over time, and they will reallocate their portfolio to pick the 75 that have the most positive sentiment. And over time, their index has outperformed the S&P 500 since the life of the index. And it does make sense that would happen, right? But again, they not only do they write on a hedge fund, but they have an index, and the index has been licensed to ALPS, and they're running an ETF, right? So, but they have as you mentioned, all of the compliance infrastructure in place, right? They actually are answerable to shareholders, right? They have the SEC watching them and so forth. So they are accountable in the analysis that they're using and the results that their fund is performing, versus if you're just winging it, you may be taking advice and guidance and taking action that can be detrimental to yourself or to your clients based on just a whim, frankly.
Yeah, and then there's also and that potential issues there with the social media sentiment is that you could potentially be using inside information, right? If people have inside information, they're sharing it on Twitter. That could be a potential problem as well. So with that being said, Mike, just to wrap things up, we do have a fun question. Avengers, obviously, I'm a big superhero genre kind of person, and I love superhero movies. And Avengers is coming out, I think it's this weekend. We wanted to throw a fun question to our guests. And one of the questions that I like that I've used in the past when I was interviewing potential prospective employees to work with my previous company that I worked at is, what would your superpower be and why?
Oh, that's hilarious. So, you had mentioned the superpower question earlier, and I was thinking, oh, it's going to be my funny one. I didn't know it was going to be Avengers style superpower. So I was going to say, as a joke, like, I can consume an insane amount of popcorn. Like, I've literally never reached the max of popcorn that I can eat. So I figured, like, if there was like a popcorn apocalypse, I could probably eat it all and save the world.
So, Mike, you know what? It's interesting. Like lately, just the last couple times that we've done this, the people are coming out of left field with their superpowers. So your superpower is to consume an unordinary amount of popcorn. That's awesome. Or is there another one that you would go to?
I was going to say, in my defense, if you think back to the Ghostbusters, I'm old enough to, have watched the original Ghostbusters, and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man came to like lay waste to the world. Like, so who knows? There could be a popcorn crisis. So if I had to choose the one superpower that I've ever seen in any of the superhero movies, right, that I want that teleportation superpower. I just think that would be the coolest thing, to be able to just kind of snap your fingers or blink your eye or whatever the magic thing that works, and all of a sudden I'm sitting in New York City right now, or I can just hop across the pond and be in London just for the heck of it, and then be back home in an instant. I always thought that would be like the coolest superpower, because think of all the time you'd save and all the cool stuff you could do in a single day. Never have to worry about traffic. I just like, boop, I'm wherever I need to be. I think that would be, if I could choose one, that's it.
I'm right there with you.
And that's Megan's top one when I asked her that question.
Yeah.
She said the exact same thing. She said, basically, if I could save the time and the effort of traveling and be there in an instant, and be able to teleport with my family and not have to worry about, all the travel issues and stuff like that. That was her number one choice for superpower. That's awesome.
A little side part here, like, Megan, have you seen the movie Jumper?
Yes.
And then how about there's another show called Tomorrow People, I think it was called.
I haven't seen that one.
It's like a sci-fi geek show, and like everybody has the superpower to be able to kind of have the jumper power. They can blast from place to place. I'm like, I totally want this. I was addicted to that show. It was like a couple of seasons. I binge watched the heck out of it on Netflix.
Yeah, I would totally want that. Anyone that's in my personal bubble would be able to come with this.
Yes, exactly. You can grab them by the hand and jump to we're in agreement. So we've got the superhero jumper type thing going on here, Megan and I.
On top of eating as much popcorn as you possibly can.
This is right? You're kind of now you should be afraid of me, right? I don't know what my costume would look like though. My superhero costume would have like a giant popcorn kernel in the chest, right? And I just blast it all over.
That's true. Yeah. I know what I'm going to get you for Christmas then.
There you go.
I'm getting you the biggest tin of popcorn I can find. Anyway, well, Mike, I've known you for years. You're awesome. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast. And also for another note, Mike Langford hosts a SoFin event every South by Southwest. It's an amazing event that he throws together, bringing in a lot of fintech companies and startups to pitch their ideas and get traction during South by Southwest. And it recently just happened in March for South by Southwest, but I'm sure he's in the initial stages of trying to figure out everything for next year. But if you ever get a chance to reach out to him about that event and get invited, it's a free event. Anyone can go that's interested in fintech or is in the fintech space to network with other fintech professionals, I would recommend that. Other than that, Mike, thank you again for coming on. And Megan, go ahead and take us home.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Mike. It's been a pleasure. For our listeners, we'll have Mike's bio and also links to finservMarketing's website in our show notes for you to learn more about their services. We'll also put a link in there with that recent SEC investor bulletin, just so you have it. And we want to thank everyone for joining us today and hope you can join us next time on the RIA Compliance Collective. Until next time, we're here to get you there.
Thank you for listening to the RIA Compliance Collective. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you want to experience the RIA Compliance Concepts difference yourself, visit riacc.io. From mock audits to customized compliance procedures, ongoing compliance assistance, and beyond, we're here for you always. Keep listening to discover more on how you can keep your advisory firm compliant so you can focus on achieving your goals. RIA Compliance Concepts. We're here together.